go and introduce our guest today. So we have a terrific program today with Julia Ghantous, who has both friends and family who lives in Qatar. And so she's got a lot of inside information about Qatar. And we also have Dawn Sanford, who is going to moderate her discussion when she's done with her presentation. So this is a casual presentation today. She was very, very generous when we had an unexpected cancellation of our program on Chile. So she is going to offer a broad spectrum, some fun stuff, some political stuff, some insider stuff. And then of course, the two of them will take some questions at the end as usual. I am going to go convince students to be excited about the semester here at Bradley. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn for our World Affairs Friday with Julia Ghantous on Qatar. Take it away, Dawn.
All right, thanks, Angela. We'll mention that Julia and I both had an opportunity to go on a World Affairs Council leadership mission to Qatar. I went you went last year, I gotta remember my years, 2019, I went in 2018. And we had very similar experiences, a lot of the same briefers in many cases. So I appreciate her background on this then and her doing this today. Julia, I know you've got a presentation. Now, when I put up the map, we'll lose seeing you, and then you just let me know when you want the PowerPoint and when you want me to move it forward then. Is that all right?
Wonderful.
All right, I'm going to put the map up now. And whoops, I got to share screen. I got to do this, right? There we go.
Yes.
There we go. You see it?
Sure, sure.
All right.
You can still see me, I think.
Yeah, I do have you. I do have you.
Thank you so much for hosting me, Angela and Dawn. It is an insider's view. I still have friends there who I contacted in the last 3 days. Therefore, there will be some fun facts to this discussion. As you can see from this map, Qatar is one of the smallest, it is one of the smallest peninsulas in the Arabian Gulf. It is 4,400 square miles. We can probably compare it to New Mexico in the United States. It is close in size to that, and it is located in Western Asia on the northeastern coast of the Arabian Gulf. It is the third exporter of natural liquefied gas in the world after Russia and Iran. So the revenue from gas and oil is used to diversify the economy, including the development of chemicals, steel, cement, fertilizer industries, and banking. The major language is Arabic, but English is widely spoken. And you can see how close Iran is to Qatar.
Sorry, I'll go back to that.
Oh, don't worry at all. This is Qatar. Can you see where Qatar is and where Iran is?
I need a little darker marker. But
yes. The population of Qatar is 2.8 million, of which 300 are Qatari citizens. So it's basically less than 10% of the population are Qataris, and the majority of the population are expats. Qataris are Arabs of the Wahhabi Sunnis sect of Islam, and Shia Muslims in Qatar can practice freely their religion. So they really coexist very well together. The Constitution guarantees the freedom to practice religious rights to all persons in accordance with the law. The country is ruled by Sheikh or Prince Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. In this discussion, I would like to stress the importance of the relationship of Qatar vis-à-vis the United States. Then I want to address Qatar's strengths as a whole, the resilience of Qatar after the blockade, how it's handling COVID-19, and some fun facts. Qatar is a young country and a strong, very strong ally to the United States. Qatar has been ruled by the Al Thani family since a treaty with the British in 1868, which recognized its separate status. Following the Ottoman rule, Qatar became a British protectorate in the early 20th century until gaining independence in 1971. So next year, basically, it will be celebrating its 50th year of its independence in 2021. During the Persian Gulf War, international coalition forces were deployed on Qatari soil. The father of the present ruler, who is Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, whenever I say Sheikh, Sheikh means prince or means the leader of the country, came to power in 1995 after ousting his father, who is Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani. And in the late 1990s, he eased press censorship and promoted ties with Iran and Israel. Since 2001, Qatar has allowed US use of Al Udeid, it's in Arabic Udeid, Al Udeid air base and headquarters for the US invasion of Iraq in 2003. Diplomatic relations between the United States and Qatar go back to 1972, following its independence from the United Kingdom. This bilateral relationship is based on regional and global issues. Qatar-US relations continue to grow in multiple areas: economic, political, military, educational, and cultural. Qatar is home to 5,000 Americans, and the US is both Qatar's largest foreign investor and its largest source of imports. It's very important to note that. The Emir, or the Prince or Sheikh, you can say, visits Washington, D.C. annually to conduct the strategic dialogue. So whenever we hear strategic dialogue, this is the meeting that takes place between the President of the United States and the Emir or the Prince of Qatar. And they discuss matters of the Middle East as a region or the relationship between Qatar and the United States. It's called the strategic dialogue. More than 750 American companies are in the Qatari market. Bilateral trade between Qatar and the United States exceeded $8 billion in 2020. We're talking about now, even during COVID-19. Qatar exports to the United States $1.57 billion, while it imports from the United States $4.42 billion. Over the years, Qatar invested largely in the American economy, thus supporting millions of jobs. Between 2015 and 2020, $35 billion have been invested in America. There are many examples that I can list, such as in 2016, Qatar Airways purchased Boeing 737 jetliner in the amount of $18.6 billion, which supports more than 100,000 American jobs in the United States. Qatar Petroleum and ExxonMobil are co-investing in a $10 billion project in the Golden Pass LNG, or liquefied natural gas. And this is in the fields in Texas, New Mexico, not to mention the real estate investment throughout the United States that Qatar invests here. We can conclude that Qatar has strong economic partnership with numerous American companies, which includes energy. We're going to now be talking about higher education, as well as numerous other fields of the economy. Now, how about the educational cooperation between the countries? I'm emphasizing the educational cooperation because really this is what puts Qatar on the map, other than the Al Jazeera network. Investing in people's brains, in their education, builds resilient society and efficient people. This is Qatar's preventive diplomacy. Qatar has an education city, a big education city. It's the flagship of Qatar Foundation. This is a vision that was founded by Sheikh Hamoza, who is the second wife of Sheikh Hamad, who is the father of the current Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, and holds campuses of some of the world's leading educational institutes, a homegrown university which is called Qatar University, and universities from the United States. There are 6 leading universities from the United States, and I'm going to name them. There's Virginia Commonwealth, Weill Cornell Medical College, Georgetown University, Texas A&M University, and Northwestern University. They are all in Qatar, in Doha, which is the capital of Qatar. More than 50% of the students in these universities are women. Qatar Foundation International has played a leading role in enhancing education in the United States. So not only in Doha, Qatar, but also in the United States, as well as in the whole region. But how did it do so in the United States? Since 2009, Qatar Foundation International provided support to United States schools for language programs in 25 schools across 8 states, supporting over 2,500 students in the US. While educating people in Qatar and abroad protects them from falling into extremism. Basically, when you understand others, you make friends and not enemies. So this is called the preventive diplomacy of Qatar. By educating people, you educate minds, and you will not fall into extremism. This progressive higher education system greatly enhanced the stature of Qatar in the Middle East and in the world. Qatar makes humanitarian contributions to the US as well. Qatar and its US Embassy in Washington, D.C. offer support to causes and organizations here in the United States. Qatar donated money following Katrina hurricane in 2005 in the amount of $100 million in direct assistance. And following Hurricane Harvey in 2017, Qatar established the Harvey Foundation and pledged around $430 million for assistance. In addition to the cooperative efforts in education and humanitarian initiatives, the US has a strategic military bond with Qatar. It's very strategic in all of the Middle Eastern region, as you can see from the map. Qatar supports the US by purchasing American military equipment. It is actually the second largest purchasing American military equipment power after Saudi Arabia. The foreign military sales program between the US and Qatar is valued at $26 billion. It purchased $21 billion in F-16 fighter jets and a number of Apache helicopters. At the 2019 US Strategic Dialogue, again, this is what takes place annually in the United States, Qatar signed a Memorandum of Understanding, or its MOU. This is M, capital M, and then small o, and then capital U. It's called the Memorandum of Understanding. Sheikh Tamim signed a treaty to expand the Al Udeid base. What's Al Udeid base? It used to be called Central Command, and it's located near Doha. It's not in the city, it's a little bit far away from the city of Doha. and it is a joint US-Qatari base outside of the United States. It's the biggest air base outside the United States, and it has over 11,000 American personnel, women and men. The United States recently practiced temporary relocation of Central Command back to the US. This is what we have heard towards September 2019. The US is shifting its focus to Asia by 2022, and that may lead to an eventual reduction in US military in Qatar. So Qatar invested $5 billion to establish Al Udeid Air Base, which is the largest US military, as I have mentioned before, and it serves as the headquarters for the US Force Central Command, US Force Forward Command, and US Special Operations. Qatari official announced that during the inaugural US-Qatar strategic dialogue in 2019 in Washington, D.C., Al Udeid will be expanded by increasing capacity to accommodate US Navy warships, to also build 200 housing in Al Udeid in order to increase US officers and to bring their families there as well, providing job opportunities for retired military members to assist by training Qatari military personnel and development of the Qatari armed forces. It's also important to mention that 80% of aero fueling in the region currently takes place at Al Udeid, while thousands of counter-terrorism missions are launched from the base in Doha, Qatar. That's very important. We visited Al Udeid base while I was at this leadership mission. We were escorted by an American public affairs major who described the base operations, and he mentioned that they have a very good relationship with the Qatari government. And the base is technically controlled by Qatar, and they have permitted the Americans to use the base. The Qatari military is composed of Qataris. They are around 12,000 people, but they also have non-Qatari service men there. When I say 12,000 Qataris, that means 12,000 Qatari men and women. It is limited by the population of Qataris, since they only constitute 300,000 Qataris. So basically, Qatar's stability is derived from its military alliance with the United States. This is really what we can conclude after realizing what has happened during the blockade. Maybe the presence of the US base there, Air Force base there, created a shield for Saudi Arabia not to invade Qatar. It made it think twice about that. I would like to talk about the Qatar's resilience following the blockade that took place in 2017, and how it was a disguise, a blessing in disguise, basically. Dawn has mentioned before the blockade in Qatar that took place, which Qatar and many countries say that this is an illegal blockade that took place on June 5th, 2017. The four Arab states are Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt, and they cut all diplomatic ties and trade with Qatar, accusing Qatar of supporting terrorism. And these allegations are consistently denied by Qatar. In the days and weeks following this dispute, cargo ships and hundreds of planes filled with food came from Turkey, Iran, Oman, and Morocco and India, in order to feed its people. I mean, how can you feed 2.8 million people when you don't have any sources of food coming in, while Qatar relied 90% of its imports, of its foods on imported foods. It had to act quickly in order to counter the effects of the blockade. What did it do? It basically asked the some countries for help. It strengthened its relationship with Iran. As you can see from this map, that's why I did not ask Dawn to remove this map from here, because I wanted you to see the proximity of Iran, which is 93, barely 93 kilometers away from the coastal area of Qatar, to help bring ships filled with food and containers of food to Qatar. This also created misinformation in the media by its neighbors, claiming that Iran is loading some ammunition and creating terrorism by loading these containers with these ammunitions or arms instead of food. So there has been a lot of misinformation during that time. As the crisis continued dramatically, Doha boosted its domestic production of food and developed alternative trade links and flight routes. The consequences of this blockade was tremendous on many countries, including the countries that blockaded Qatar. And I'm going to give you a few examples. There are 200,000 Egyptian workers in Qatar who work there. Instead of taking them 3 hours to get to Cairo, now it probably takes them 8 hours to get to Cairo because of the air blockade. They are one of the countries that blockaded Qatar. So they will think twice of visiting their family instead of visiting their families twice or 3 times a year during the different holiday breaks. They probably will visit their family once a year, since it takes them twice and 3 times more time to get there. This is one of the examples. This crisis really touched the fabric of society. Many families are touched by this blockade and still are touched by this blockade because it severed the relationships between families. Many people were banned from staying in these blocked countries, and they were deported from these countries back to Qatar. For example, if a mother or a father or a son have the Qatari nationality, they have to go back to Qatar, and they're not allowed to see each other. One of these restrictions are also religious restrictions. They cannot go and practice Hajj, which is one of the pillars of Islam, to go and visit Saudi Arabia, Mecca in particular, to practice one of these pillars of Islam, Hajj. They're not allowed to go to Saudi Arabia for that. There are intermarriages, tribal intermarriages and relationships that took place between these countries. Now they go to other places, or they go outside their tribes to get married, which really breaks this relationship and ties between these families. It's also very sad when you cannot meet your family face to face in the country of origin, but you can meet in Kuwait or Oman, or you have to go to London to meet with your loved ones. This breaks the family ties. if, let's say, one of the family lives in the United Arab Emirates and they have relatives in Qatar, they cannot see each other, let's say, in the United Arab Emirates or in Qatar, they have to go to London to see each other or go to Kuwait. So it has social implications. If we were to talk about the economic side of the blockades, Qatar's losses were estimated to be around $43 billion. And, but it has become very independent and ready for the challenges posed by the new coronavirus. How is that? The blockade has prepared Qatar to deal with the supply chain disruptions. And it has achieved a lot of self-sufficiency across the food and agriculture sector, as well as the transport sector, making Qatar more independent in managing supply chains. For example, Qatar brought 5,000 cows from Ireland in order to grow its dairy industry. In the industrial sector, Qatar used the blockade as an opportunity to diversify and expand local production, which has increased its resilience. The Qatari government noted the country will be one of the few in the world to run a fiscal surplus this year in 2020. So there are lessons learned over the last 3 years about the self-resilience of the Qataris and Doha for their economy. And since the blockade started, they have accelerated initiatives to diversify their economy and to reduce reliance on imports and on other countries. For example, Qatar relied mainly on dairy products imports from Saudi Arabia with 400 tons of milk and dairy products brought daily into Qatar. And now it imports, after importing these 5,000 cows or the thousands of cows that we're talking about that were brought in by air, and importing thousands of, they not only imported cows from Europe, but they also imported cows from the United States. This allowed Qatar to eventually become more food self-sufficient and even move towards exporting dairy products. During this COVID-19 pandemic, they were really ready to stock their warehouses with key staple goods such as rice, sugar, flour, in response to the blockade. And this ensured that their supermarkets shelves were filled during the peak of the pandemic weeks. And while supplies depleted in many countries around the world, their supplies were quite full. And 3 years back, the local production of fruits and vegetables did not exceed 10%. Today, they are almost at 30%, and they hope that by 2025, they will be at 50%. We could say that Qatar achieved the top spot for food security in the Middle East, and it's ranked 13th globally in the latest Global Food Security Index by the Economist Intelligence Unit. So this is really, we could be so proud of this achievement for Qatar. And while Qatar Airways, which is the country's national carrier, initially experienced a substantial loss in 2017 because of the blockade, so it could not really go through different countries after losing access to 18 cities. In the 4 blockading nations, its annual fiscal revenues have steadily grown since. It deepened its trade relations with regional allies, namely Turkey and Iran. The blockade forced Doha to turn to other countries to circumvent the impact of the siege. So Qatar is more close in relations diplomatically and economically with Iran and Turkey. This really helped these countries to remain a principal source for food and medicine to Qatar. the trade balance between the two countries dramatically increased, reaching $2 billion between 2017 and 2018, while these countries don't have necessarily any relationship with Qatar. But as you have seen, strategically speaking, Qatar is very close geographically to Iran. So it does help to have these good relations with its neighboring country. In addition to food and trade, ambitious new art and cultural projects have risen in Qatar over the past 3 years as it gears for the FIFA, which is the Football World Cup in 2022. And in 2019, Qatar opened its national museum, which is called Desert Rose. It's a beautiful museum that looks like a rose desert, which consists of particles that you can find in the desert, made of Don, what could you call them? Of natural calcification.
Yeah, that's the way to put it.
Mm-hmm. And this project cost them $500 million, showcasing natural culture and history, as well as wildlife and scientific achievements in the futuristic display. It also spent, billions of dollars collecting world famous arts, and it has the Islamic Art Museum. And when I was there, it was so beautiful to see the patriotic display of flags and portraits of Sheikh or the Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani displayed on skyscrapers around the capital to show the support of their support of their leader. And I would like to just mention to you, after I have spoken to my friend about the way basically Qatar has dealt with COVID-19. Although the country has 23 confirmed death cases of COVID-19, the infection rate is quite high. It has 40,000 people infected with COVID-19, but this is how the government has been dealing with it. There's an app called Ehtiraz, E-H-T-E-R-A-Z. It's a government app to curb the transmission of the virus. And this is a contact tracing mobile app allowing the government to track if the user has been close or in touch with an infected person. So not having the app could lead to a fine, dramatic fine. It could be 50,000, I think, riyals, or 3 years in prison. And this is how it works. There's a green barcode that is checked, for example, when you enter a mall. Let's say, when I called my friend, she says, you have to show your mobile phone when you enter a certain place to a person at the door, and this person sees and checks your phone to see if you have a green bar on the app, on this Ehtiraz app. And if the bar is green, that means you are not infected with the disease. But let's say if you were at a proximity of someone who is infected, the app starts buzzing, and you will have a red code or a red barcode on your phone saying that you are at a proximity of someone who is infected with the virus. So infected people are quarantined in hotels. Usually the government allows the infected people to order take-out food if they would like, or they provide the people with food at the government's expense. And all medical costs are covered. And anyone who is infected can go to their wished hospital at the government's expense. All charges are covered. I would like to provide you with some fun facts about Qatar. I would really encourage you to go to Doha. This is where I grew up, and it's a very, very dear area to my heart. Qatar is small, rich, and ambitious. I hope you get the chance to visit it one day. You will be struck by the friendliness and generosity of the people. These are the fun facts. There is tolerance for diversity. It's the highest GDP per capita, $70,000 per year. You don't have to pay electricity bills or medical bills if you go to the hospital. If you have your medical card, you can just show it once you enter the hospital, and all your medical bills are paid by the government. You don't pay taxes at all. You will not find a homeless person. It has the highest level of safety and security, and as of today, I just read that it has the lowest crime rate in the world. People rank happy second after Luxembourg. They're combating poverty, and they have a culture of solidarity. Foreign aid accounts to $2 billion per year. 65% of the population is under the age of 50 years. For me, this is really more than enough and satisfying. If I didn't convince you to go there, I'll try my best next time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Julia. And let me move out of this and see if I can get back to everybody here. We do have some questions for you here off of chat as I'm moving around. Okay, here we go. Let me go back to it. And let's see here. Okay. We have a question here. Has the strategic dialogue taken place every year, and since when?
The strategic dialogue started in 2018, and since then it's been taking place every year. So we hope that this year it will take place, but with COVID-19, we don't know.
Okay. I'll mention something that was sent to me privately, but it was about the Qatar Airlines, which flies over Iranian airspace, which they've allowed them. So that was a blessing. And Julia, you mentioned it. The big thing with Iran is Qatar is the one that is doing the natural gas and the oil, even on the Iranian part. So it is really important that those two countries get along. And that always is a little bit of a sore spot, obviously, with other countries there as well.
This was the blessing actually from President Trump and Pompeo when these relationships between Iran and Qatar took place after the blockade of the quartets. It wasn't without their blessing. And this is how it started.
And then we've also got from Charles and Judy Bush, what is Qatar's relationship with Israel?
Qatar has an embassy, an Israeli embassy in Qatar. It's the second, I think, I'm not going to say any numbers, but they have political relations and diplomatic relations together, as well as economic relations with Israel.
Okay, I've got one more on chat, and then we'll just let any of you that want, you can unmute yourself and just ask the question yourselves then. From Barb Drake, we have, if no one pays taxes, how does the government get money to provide services?
The money, the government gets money from its gas revenue. since it owns the gas company, which is Qatar Petroleum Company.
All right. And other questions?
Yes, you know, at the very beginning of your talk, Julia, you mentioned the population, and then I didn't understand, what did you say about the percentage that were like native? Can you repeat that?
Yes, of course. There are 300,000 natives, and 2.8 is the overall population. Therefore, the native population is a minority, relatively speaking, to the overall expats who come to work in Qatar, to the foreigners who work in Qatar.
Thank you.
All right, we got another question off of the chat. You indicated that Qatar maintains friendly relations with Iran. This seems somewhat paradoxical. With relations to Iran, would they be strained due to the U.S. military base in Qatar? From Bob.
Not necessarily. There is no military relationship with Iran. There's economic relationship with Iran. This was the only way to get and feed the people when Qatar was deadlocked actually. It could not use its airspace, it could not use its sea, it could not use its land. The only way it had a way out was using its port through Iran. This was the only way to get food and medication. Otherwise, the people were going to starve to death. Before attempting this relationship, it was a cordial relationship. But other than that, there wasn't really economic, there was a little bit of an economic relationship, but not to that extent. Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani contacted, actually at that time it was Sheikh Tamim, contacted President Trump and Pompeo before attempting any dialogue. And with their blessings, they continued exporting the liquefied natural gas to even the United Arab Emirates, in spite of the fact that the United Arab Emirates blockaded Qatar, was one of the countries that blockaded Qatar, and took the United States okay to exchange food, goods, and medication, to do so on its own. But it doesn't really threat the Air Force, the United States Air Force there.
Julia, I'll add just a little bit to that. Ironically, probably the country that is most opposed to the air base there is Saudi Arabia. And they, with the blockade, they were pushing hard for us to abandon and leave that air base. And you could pretty much, as they say, follow the money. Here in the United States, the people that spoke out against the base, that we ought to close it down, were some very powerful and prominent people, which I don't think all of them were bought, but their propaganda has had tremendous influence. And I think Qatar soon found out that they can't sit out the game. They've got to do their own propaganda, which and so they've been much more aggressive at kind of trying to get into the media here in the United States and sell their point of view. Julia, I think maybe I did get lucky. We had the Brigadier General and his top staff all give us our VIP tour. And so I got to talk to the commander of the base quite a bit. And he said that that is a very important base to them. And they were very upset about the political battle back in the United States, saying that we should close it down. We don't need it. We're there for a country that supports terrorism. And the charge d'affaires at the embassy said for the last 3 years, Qatar has really met their needs and has backed off funding, harboring, which they had been.
Yes.
But they've been very, very good to meet what they'd ask them to do. So there's a lot of fight in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and the UAE in particular, and Egypt, who hates the Muslim Brotherhood, are really wanting to hurt Qatar really badly. And that could hurt our national interest because that base is so centrally located to hit all around. So anyway, I wanted to add that because there is an ongoing battle even here in the United States about the value. But the military there says it is one of our most important bases.
To add to that, also, Saudi Arabia is scared of the Shiite Muslims.
Yes.
And the spread of the Shiites. And look where Iran used to be in Iran, and now Iran is in Syria and in Yemen and in other countries.
Bahrain too.
Yeah, yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, this is Bernie Drake.
Okay, Bernie?
Is Qatar the home of Al Jazeera? And is that part of the problem with Saudi Arabia and some of the other countries?
Go, Julia. Yeah, we're all shaking our head. Yeah, big time.
Saudi Arabia does not like Al Jazeera. Saudi Arabia thinks the critical remarks of Al Jazeera are not in place for it to exist. Therefore, one of the demands is to close Al Jazeera in Doha, Qatar.
And Bernie, I'll add that what really irks Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt is that quite a few of the people on there call for more democracy and against authoritarian government. And of course, that just drives them crazy because they're, as authoritarian as you can get. So they do not like a mouthpiece that has different points of view.
Is Al Jazeera state supported by Qatar, or is it it an independent?
100%.
Okay. And one silly question, I've also heard it called Qatar. So what is the proper?
They say it both ways. They say Qatar and Qatar.
There's actually 6 correct pronunciations I found before I went over there.
That's right.
The Qataris pronounce it. The one I found most appropriate is closer to our guitar. So, but you will hear it, and they don't mind. I found out they don't mind, as long as you're pronouncing it somewhere in the ballpark.
It's the only without a U.
Yeah, I also wanted to add on Al Jazeera, when we met with the general manager of the station, my question actually was, I felt they were very unbiased when they first came on. I was really amazed, and especially with Qatar being 100% financing them. And I said, I felt like in recent years that I had felt they had kind of backed off a little bit of certain types of criticism. And they certainly weren't covering the problems in Qatar, especially like with the minority workers, or the migrant workers, excuse me. And and his answer to me was that they don't view Qatar, they mainly do international affairs. And so they don't do domestic. So unless it's an international story for Qatar, then that's what they'll cover. So they won't cover domestically the migrant workers unless it somehow would explode into an international issue. I don't know if that was a cop-out, but at this point, most of them there are like former BBC, have worked at Sky News, DW News. They really have a big background. I was impressed with them, but I think they do watch their toes a little bit, but I think on the whole, they're still allowed to be pretty fair.
Julia, Judy and I have been to Qatar twice for a total of 5 hours.
Oh, okay, well, I feel better.
all spent in the airport. There may still be a daily direct flight from Chicago to Doha on Qatar Airlines. And another fun fact is that the airport in Doha, which I think is called Hamid International, is the only airport in the world that was designed by and for an airline. And as a result, it's hailed as one of the most efficient airlines in the world, and almost every flight in and out of there is international. And recently I saw someplace online a YouTube 20-minute video of the airport, which just indicates how phenomenal it is. And it even got inside the this huge 400,000 square foot kitchen, showing the preparation of all the meals. But it looked like a very intriguing place to visit. I'm not sure what month of the year it's temperate, but anyway, we enjoyed our 5 hours there.
Well, if Julia's like me, I'm afraid, Charles, you saw a lot more of the airport than we did, because we were greeted at the door of the plane and taken as VIPs by limousine to the VIP section to go through. And then same way, flying out, we were VIPs and escorted especially to the first class Q suite. So we didn't get to see. Julia, did you see more of the airport than I did, or?
Yeah, since I go a lot to that area, and I usually, even if I want to go visit my parents in Lebanon, I would take Qatar Airways. I love this airline. I love their airport as well. It is true. It is very, very efficient, and they're still expanding it for FIFA 2022. I agree. It is just phenomenal, and yeah, it's one of the most functional airports that you would see in the world. Definitely.
Can I throw in something here?
Yeah.
We were very impressed. Our plane was full and we took off ahead of time. We didn't have to wait until the magic hour.
Well, that's good. Julia, let me add, before we run out of time today too, on the World Cup.
Yes.
I just hot off the press this morning, Julia, since you and I talked yesterday, Qatar has the second highest per capita rate of coronavirus currently. And they've gone over 100,000 cases. They have 133 deaths. And part of that is attributed is they have a young, fit population, but it is primarily going through the migrant population. And because they're in very close proximity to each other, and even when they're not working, they're in close proximity because of the quarters that they live in. So the real concern is the construction's going, but it's really slowed. And I had somewhere here, oh yeah, they've got dozens of hotels, sports stadiums being constructed. I believe, was it eight or six, Julia?
Well, there were 6.
6, okay, I slipped my mind. And they're building a world-class transportation infrastructure that has 47 miles of metro system and miles of brand new roads, which we got to go on when we went out with the dune rides. Got to go on quite a bit of it. So I think there'll be a real concern, will everything be done by 2022 with this issue going on?
I hope so, yes. The migrant workers, especially the ones working on site, many of them live in compounds. Therefore, they live, the quarters, for example, you can find 6 people living in one room. Yeah. And this is why the infection rate is quite high.
They're kind of like prisons with the door open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they're like in bunk beds, and it's pretty tough. So we got a couple of minutes left. One final question. Anybody?
Well, there are some good questions on chat that I would.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I wasn't even looking down there. I apologize. Let me go through here. We may run a little bit over because it's my fault. Let me get the first. Oh, how are women's rights in Qatar? What is your personal story of moving from Doha to USA? Keep it as short as you can. My fault.
I moved here in 1990 during the first Gulf War, but I kept visiting my parents there. My parents left 4 years ago to Lebanon, and I've been a visitor since then. Since 1990, I went to visit as a tourist, really. I have to say, women play a very important role in Qatar. You can see women in very high positions. When we went on this leadership trip, many of the people who we met were women in high roles, whether it's in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or in the Education Department or economy. Some of them are heads of banks. They have a very high purchasing power. Therefore, many ads are geared to women since they make the decision in, in what they want to buy or not to buy. They have, I can say they have rights as, I cannot say, for example, that the salaries are equal to men. No, there are still disparities in terms of salaries, and that needs to be worked on, as in many countries around the world. In terms of rights, they follow the Sharia law, which is the Islamic law. But if a woman wants to get to a certain position, nothing can stop her.
Okay. We have another question here from Diane. Migrants are from what African continent? I'll just kind of mention very quickly that one. They're mainly Southeast Asia, South Asia, Philippines, Indonesia, a huge number from there. Another question is from Joyce. Do migrants also receive free health care?
Yes, migrants also receive free health care as long as they have their health ID, which is provided to them as soon as they start work.
Okay, and Barb Drake, why did your family move to Qatar and why did you leave?
My family, my dad moved to Qatar. He was 18 years old for economic reasons. Lebanon has always been in turmoil. And I want to specify, it's not because there's always problems in the Middle East as people label the Middle East. Negotiations in the Middle East, they take place. There's history. There's a lot of small difficulties in terms of having the rapprochement happen. There should be understanding of the people before negotiations start and how to approach people. And this is not necessarily understood in the West. He was there when he was 18 years old. He started working to help his family. Then a few years later, maybe 12 years later, he got married to my mom. And we grew up there. Then when he reached, after 62 years, he couldn't work anymore. He got sick, and he's not a citizen. He's Lebanese. They don't give you citizenship. Now there is a citizenship program. You have to apply to it, and they have certain criteria that are sometimes difficult to meet. We don't fall into that criteria. My mom and dad have the Canadian citizenship. So when he fell sick, he was not able to work anymore and left the country, which is very hard for them because they love it, they love the people, and it's still hard for them to adjust to Lebanon. I left, it was during the first Gulf War. I was supposed to do my master's in London, and one of my teachers in Geneva was the head of the graduate department at Bradley. She convinced me to stay and do my master's here, and that's what I did. So I've been here since then.
All right, well, great. Well, we're getting a lot of compliments, Julia, on the chat area there, and you did an outstanding job today and really appreciate that. As you can tell, Julia and I will be more than happy to talk about Qatar with any of you anytime that you want to talk. Feel free to get a hold of either one of us.